Struggling with blood sugar levels, ready to shed those extra pounds effortlessly? Look no further. Sugar Defender, the #1 rated blood sugar formula, is here to transform your health and help you achieve your wellness goals. Click the link in the video description to get started with Sugar Defender today.
The parents of a child killed in the Sandy Hook massacre suffered a major blow in their attempt to collect on some of the $50 million they won in a lawsuit against conspiracy theorist Alex Jones over his false claims that the shooting was a hoax. Attorneys for Scarlett Lewis and Neil Heslin, whose 6-year-old son Jesse Lewis died in the 2012 Connecticut shooting, obtained an order from a state judge in Texas earlier this month allowing them to begin collecting some of the assets from Jones' company, InfoWars' parent company, Free Speech Systems. That order came just hours after federal bankruptcy judge Christopher Lopez dismissed the company's bankruptcy claim. But Lopez said in court on Thursday that the state judge's ruling conflicts with federal bankruptcy law as 8 other families of Sandy Hook victims await the money from their $1.4 billion verdict while Jones appeals the case. "I don't think the state court was actually informed of all these issues," the judge said. He ruled on Thursday that a newly appointed federal trustee assigned to oversee the liquidation of Jones' personal assets now has control over Jones' ownership of Free Speech Systems. Lopez then said the trustee, Christopher Murray, has the sole authority to sell off the company's assets and distribute the proceeds equally among all of Jones' creditors. "There will be no attempt, and you are under no obligation to turn over the bank account or access to the bank account," Lopez told Murray, the News-Times reports. Mark Bankston, a lawyer representing Lewis and Heslin, slammed the decision in a statement on Thursday. "Our clients are frustrated that they will not be allowed to pursue their state court rights after all," he said. Apparently this case will remain in limbo much to Mr. Jones' delight, while the other group of plaintiffs insist they are entitled to nearly all the recovery. Lewis and Heslin, who now live in Texas, have been at odds with the relatives of the other young victims in Connecticut over how Jones' bankruptcies should end and how his assets should be sold off. They had tried to seize his business accounts almost immediately after Lopez denied the bankruptcy claim and converted Jones' personal bankruptcy reorganization case into a liquidation, meaning that many of his assets will be sold off to pay creditors. Lawyers for Lewis and Heslin said the dismissal of Free Speech Systems case meant they could go back to the Texas State Court in Austin and ask a judge to order the company to begin turning over money and other assets to Lewis and Heslin. But Trustee Murray filed an emergency motion asking the judge to halt their collection of the funds in state court, arguing that it would interfere with the shutdown and liquidation of Jones' company. He wrote that it threatens to throw the business into chaos, potentially stopping it in its tracks, and asked Lopez to pause Texas action while he works on an orderly wind-down of Free Speech Systems operations, the New York Times reports. The families of the 8 victims who sued Jones in Connecticut had also filed an emergency motion asking Lopez to block Texas ruling. They argued it would lead to a race between Sandy Hook families to the state courts in Texas and Connecticut to see who could get Jones' assets first, as attorneys on both sides claim the other are trying to get a disproportionate share of Jones' assets. The Connecticut attorneys say the size of their client's jury award entitles them to a greater share of Jones' assets, and wrote in the emergency filing they hold more than 95% of liquidated claims. But those families are barred from seeking any assets through the state courts while Jones appeals the judgments in the state courts, arguing he had a First Amendment right to make his claims. Attorneys for the Texas family, however, have argued that the assets Jones had should be distributed equally among all the families. Last week, Mark Bankston, a lawyer representing Lewis and Heslin, even claimed that Connecticut lawyers rebuffed his team's offer to share any money recovered through the state courts equally. The attorneys for the Connecticut plaintiffs have consistently refused an equitable distribution, he claimed, according to the Times. They insist, despite the exceedingly small pool of recovery they caused to happen, that they are entitled to nearly all amounts collect.